Welcome back to the studio. You're watching live from Paris here on France 24. I'm Shona Bhattacharya. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let's take a look at our top stories this hour. Emmanuel Macron is in Strasbourg to pay homage to the victims of Tuesday's attack and to meet with their families. This as another victim has died of his wounds, bringing the death toll to 4. The UN summit in Poland on climate change is set to be extended through the weekend to give negotiators more time to hash out the details of a comprehensive draft agreement. That text is expected to put in place measures called for at the Paris summit 3 years ago. And Kosovo's parliament votes overwhelmingly to create an army, a move that drew swift condemnation from both neighboring Serbia and its ally, Russia. Paying his respects to the victims of Tuesday's shooting in Strasbourg, Emmanuel Macron laid a flower on the monument where locals have been placing notes and candles. The French president was accompanied by his interior minister. The death toll surged to 4 after one victim died of his wounds. Of the 12 wounded, one has been declared brain dead. Macron is also meeting with the families of the victims. The Christmas market where the attack took place has reopened. It's a popular spot with locals and tourists alike. French police led a 2-day manhunt to find the attacker and killed him on Thursday evening. The investigation into him and his actions continues despite his death. Police are hoping to find out if he acted alone and what prompted him to open fire. Shirley Sipon has more.
When Sheriff Shekat was shot dead in a gun battle with police, he was carrying one firearm seen next to him on these pictures. An old weapon from the late 19th century that resembles the one he used to shoot down passers-by on Tuesday. One of the questions police are trying to answer is, how did Shekat get that pistol? Did he have accomplices? Did someone prepare the attack with him? Did accomplices help him hide out during his 48-hour escape?
At
this stage, 7 people remain in custody. The 4 members of his family, who were taken in overnight between Tuesday and Wednesday, and 3 members of his close entourage.
Among those being questioned, 2 of Shekat's brothers and his parents. A 3rd brother is being interrogated in Algeria. Authorities want to determine if the suspect was connected to terror organizations. Hamak, the propaganda branch of the Islamic State group, said Shekat acted on its behalf. But France's interior minister rejected the claim.
The Islamic State group's opportunistic claim doesn't change anything.
Investigators have reportedly found no written proof or video showing the suspect claiming allegiance to a terrorist organization.
Theresa May did not get what she was looking for in Brussels this Friday. The British Prime Minister was hoping to obtain changes to the so-called divorce agreement, the terms of Britain's exit from the European Union. That's because the UK's Parliament is unlikely to vote it through. But European leaders only gave her reassurances instead. Here's European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker and Theresa May on the day's talks.
The EU is clear, as I am, that if we are going to leave with the deal, this is it. But my discussions with colleagues today have shown that further clarification and discussion following the Council's conclusions is, in fact, possible. There is work still to do, and we will be holding talks in coming days about how to obtain the further assurances that the UK Parliament needs in order to be able to approve the deal. I say again, it is in the overwhelming interest of all our people, in the EU and the UK, to get this done, and as quickly as possible.
It was crystal clear that nobody in the room did agree to reopening in any way the withdrawal agreement. These attacks coming from Westminster against Europe, against the European Commission, will not be responded in the same way by the European Commission and by the European Union. Although I would like to do it.
Extending their meeting, negotiators at the UN climate talks taking place in Poland are now expected to debate their comprehensive draft agreement for 2 more days, bringing the summit to a close on Sunday. That's because some key issues remain unresolved. The goal of the COP24 meeting is to finalize the rules that countries that signed the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement must follow. The realities of climate change have already begun altering life as we know it, especially in low-altitude areas and islands. Here's the head of the Maldives delegation, former President Mohamed Nasheed.
We met the UN Secretary General after that, and the Secretary General has assured us that he will do everything he can to see that there is a satisfactory draft soon. So we are hopeful that we will see all the elements that the small countries are looking for in the new text. Mainly, we want countries to believe in the science, countries to say that global temperatures rising above 1.5 degrees would be wrong.
For more on this story, our guest is Jennifer Morris, research scientist at MIT in Massachusetts. Thank you so much for joining us. What kind of text can we expect at the end of this summit?
So it's hard to know what type of text to expect, but the goal is to have a set of rules that all of the countries are ready to follow through in their Paris Agreement. There are, of course, a number of countries that have been holding up the acceptance of the 1.5 degree C report. So that's been a key issue, slowing things down. But luckily, most nations do recognize the risks of climate change and are making serious efforts to make sure that this agreement does succeed.
Why has it taken 3 years to even begin to implement the measures called for at the 2015 Paris meeting?
So it's a hard process. All these global level negotiations take time, but I wouldn't say that there hasn't been anything happening in the last 3 years. I think there has been some key progress made in some countries. While we've seen in the U.S., of course, the president announcing that he'd like to withdraw from the agreement. At the same time, we've seen local and regional governments and cities and businesses really stepping up their commitment to climate action to try to fill that void. And so there has been action on that front. We've seen a massive expansion in renewables globally, which even without specific policies in place relevant to the Paris Agreement, those are having an impact globally on emissions. And so and also at the same time, countries like China has been exploring their regional emission trading schemes and looking to make that into a national policy. So there has been a number of efforts related to how countries want to meet their Paris pledges that are taking place. The specifics of the international agreement just take longer. And so these are like the very detailed rules about how often countries are going to report their emissions and be reviewed as to how well they're doing in terms of meeting their pledges. So that's taking longer to get in place. Hopefully we will, by the end of this weekend, have a rule book to follow. But in the meantime, there continues to be some progress made globally.
Yeah, but even you talk about progress, but at the same time, we saw that last year carbon emissions rose by 2.7%, that the use of coal is on the rise around the world. If progress is being made, it's not enough to offset an increase in the use of fossil fuels, it seems.
Yeah. Trends are worrisome. It's absolutely true that the challenge of meeting the Paris goals is daunting. And I don't want to overstate that or understate that challenge, rather. Our research at MIT indicates that we need a dramatic turnaround in emissions in the very near future. Talking between now and 2020, we really need to get countries agreeing for very strict reductions. And I would say, while we have seen some negative trends in terms of emissions are continuing to rise. If we can get countries to at least meet their Paris pledges, our research shows that would actually halt emissions up to 2030. And so we do still have, time for countries to meet their pledges.
But how much can governments really do? I mean, 100 companies in the world are responsible for more than 70% of greenhouse gas emissions. Those are companies, some of those companies are owned by governments, but a lot of them are private. How much can governments really do at this point?
So I do still think there's a lot that governments can do, but I do agree that there's even more that lower level actors can play, like in terms of state governments. We see in the U.S., California taking a big lead, and hopefully other states will be following, and businesses and cities themselves. But I think in terms of businesses, it's really important for the public to kind of have better communication about what the global risks are and kind of apply that knowledge in terms of pressure on businesses to make changes to their business practices.
Thank you so much for joining us on France 24 and answering our questions. Jennifer Morris, research scientist at MIT. Thank you so much. Kosovo's parliament has voted overwhelmingly to approve the formation of an army. As it stands, the young Balkan country has a 4,000-strong security force. But neighboring Serbia, that does not recognize Kosovo, that used to be a former province before Kosovo's war of independence, warns it could respond with an armed intervention. For more on the story, let's cross to Belgrade, the Serbian capital, with France 24's Laurent Rouy. Laurent, why is Kosovo looking to create an army now?
Well, the fact is that Kosovo wanted to create this army for a very long time. In fact, during the war in 1998, 1999, the KLA guerrilla fighters didn't want, at the end of the fight, to give up their arms, their weapons. They had to. But the Civil Corps of Protection of Kosovo was created with the former fighters of the KLA. And today, this civilian protection corps that is being transformed into an army. This is a long process that's going to take many years, but still there is a huge will from the people and from the political elite in Kosovo to do that. President Hashim Thaçi tried to do it last year. This year, Premier Ramush Haradinaj managed to do it. In spite that the EU and the NATO didn't want it, they were saying that it was too soon, too early. But still, Kosovo wants to push it because they feel that they are in a strong position in negotiation with Belgrade, and that Belgrade cannot stop them. So that's probably the reason why they pushed it now.
Now, Serbia has condemned the move. What is Serbia afraid of? Well,
you have two things to see. First of all, there is a quite huge Serbian minority in Kosovo. About 150,000 Serbs still live there. They represent a little under 5% of the population. They live in the north, and they are afraid of this army because they still see the Albanian as their enemy, and they are afraid that this army, the newborn army, could kick them out of Kosovo and would force them to flee in neighboring Serbia. Of course, this fear is instrumentalized by the nationalistic government in Belgrade. And this is why the Prime Minister, Ana Brnabić, said that there could be a military intervention. This is very unlikely because, for the moment, NATO is still in Kosovo with considerable forces. They've been moving around Kosovo those days and took position in the Serb-inhabited areas in order to show them that they were protected, that they were not under threat of anyone. And of course, the Albanian government would not dare to do such a movement because Kosovo wants, as Serbia, to join the EU in some future. And of course, an armed conflict would be a very bad idea for one or the other country to join the EU.
Laurent Rouy reporting there live from Belgrade. Thank you so much for that. Now for a quick reminder of some of our top stories. This hour, Emmanuel Macron is in Strasbourg to pay homage to the victims of Tuesday's attack and meet with their families. This as another victim has died of his wounds, bringing the death toll to 4. The UN summit in Poland on climate change is set to be extended through the weekend to give negotiators more time to hash out the details of a comprehensive draft agreement. That text is expected to put in place measures called for at the Paris summit 3 years ago.